With Pokemon games being released yearly along with the newer sort of spin-offs that come with them, you'd think that Game Freak would have had the formula of the perfect Pokemon game done and over with. However, this isn't the case. In my opinion, the newer games are missing some key aspects that really made the game enjoyable. Things such as Black City and Pokemon Black and White, or the underground caves in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, are such critical pieces that bring back nostalgia and give the games personality, which is something that's been lacking in the newer games. The main part of any Pokemon game, or game in general, is the adventure you go on to finish the story. Pokemon's approach to this is starting in a small town, completing an underdog story, where you start small and then become the Pokemon champion. So what's the issue with this in newer games? I feel like ever since the 3DS, the games have started dwindling in quality, especially in the newest games, starting with Pokemon X and Y. Pokemon X and Y was the start of the end for the series in my opinion. The story seemed rushed and Team Flare was just hypocritical and confusing. Lysander is a well-off philanthropist whose team is seen as greedy and egotistical. They plan on making an ultimate weapon that kills all Pokemon and people who don't agree with his ideals of stopping people from wasting the world's resources. He's an overall repulsive example of classism, only deeming those worthy of inheriting the new world are people who can buy their way into Team Flare. Besides the cartoonishly evil villains of X and Y, there's no meaningful moments that I can look back on and remember anything good, or even remember at all. The Lucario arc with Karina was probably the most memorable aspect of the game, along with the newer Pokemon introduced, but the journey is lackluster. I don't think there's much of a sense of adventure in the game. It's linear and just lacking in NPC dialogue, good rivals, plot holes, aka the blackout, but people were still walking in and out of the area where the whole thing was based off of like the Eiffel Tower. Moving on to the next game, Pokemon Sun and Moon. I'm currently replaying through it and honestly I don't hate it, but it's still missing some plot. Now don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed the islands you have to explore, and the trials where it gets shake up from the usual go to a building and fight through the trainers, then fight the gym leader and you win. This game felt like I was going on an adventure. The ride Pokemon were great and the fact that you actually had to use them in other parts of the game was needed. Actually using items or Pokemon you collect from all points in the story is one of my favorite mechanics. It adds a sense of growth and makes the player brainstorm a little in some puzzling areas. Unfortunately, I have a major issue with the game and the fact that the game revolves around Lily and her growth from a meek, wimpy person to an affirmative and strong trainer. Which is like, good for her, honestly, but the main character seems to be a background character in their own game. It doesn't always feel like this, there's many interactive parts of the game that center around the player, but the endgame is all about Lily, Gladion, their mother, and the Ultra Beast. It doesn't ruin the game for me at all. I do hate Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, but that's mostly due to the game's plot being exactly the same, but the end of the game is slightly different. I think it should have been added as an alternative timeline as post-game content, not another $60 around dollar game. Now let's talk about another game that should have been $60, Pokemon Sword and Shield. I hate being upset with this game because the character writing was so good, but everything else was a complete disaster and you can tell that the game was rushed. The environment was perfect. I love having that early version of the wild area and the towns actually had a solid design. At the same time, it didn't feel like a world per se. It felt like I was sightseeing in this 3 block world, increasing in difficulty. It was good for the time, but I just hated the part of the gym system. The post game was awful, just going through again to fight the Dynamax Pokemon. Swordward and Shieldbird, the animations, it was all rushed. The DLC being an extra $40 for something that could have made the game at least a little bit better was appalling. Some things I did enjoy, journey-wise, was the Pokemon Camp, Battle Stadium, and the Wild Area. The Pokemon Camp gave your Pokemon more personality and interactivity. Cooking meals for your Pokemon and playing with them was very fun for me, and it gave an extra added little bonus. The Battle Stadium wasn't the best, but I enjoyed the competitive aspect added to the game. Lastly, the wild area is the best thing this game has to offer. While the entire area was small, it still managed to incorporate all different kinds of terrain and make me want to stay in the wild area with all the dens scattered around. Finally, let's talk about the adventure in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and honestly, it's a dramatic increase in the journey and the aspect of Pokemon. The adventure actually feels like you're going on a worldwide journey with your Pokemon in a big, open world. I love the map. I have no complaints with it. It's big, you can go anywhere, there's always something to see in every corner of the area, be it Pokemon, items, or even just a stunning environment. The story is amazing. There's depth to its characters, especially Arven. The main story is fun to play. One of my only gripes is how the game plays in the post-game content. While there is DLC coming soon, the post-game content could have been something more grand. I didn't hate it, but it seemed anticlimactic, at least to me. My Pokemon were overleveled and the gym leaders didn't give me much of a challenge. I felt like they could have given the gym leaders more backstory. There was so much potential to make the gym leaders have more of a personality so the player could get attached to them or get to know them more, but sadly I didn't care for them or even remember what they did story-wise, except for Larry because he obviously seemed like a favorite for the writers or a sort of self-insert character. The battle festival after fighting the gym leaders post-game was underwhelming and predictable. Having the player fight both rivals and then the champion just was something I knew was going to happen. It was a bit disappointing, but it didn't completely ruin the journey for me. Something that really stuck with me was Area Zero. While some parts of it wasn't the best design wise, discovering this sparkling new area with new Pokemon and story to follow was incredible. Though short, the area was massive and had brand new Pokemon to fight and capture. The plot was the best part of the entire event. Ending Arvin's story in this deep way was a tear-jerking experience. Definitely got me a bit sadder than I would have liked, but overall, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet brought back the glory of what Pokemon can still be. I think overall, all Pokemon games have a sense of exploration, but some of the games seem a bit linear. For example, in almost all the new gen Pokemon games from X and Y to Sword and Shield, they force the player to go a certain route. While there are things to find and mysteries to uncover, there's still no feeling of the game being a world. As the games continue to be made, the less space they take up. For example, comparing the Kanto region to the Galar region shows less interconnectivity and less room to choose your own path. In Johto, you can battle a different gym leader as long as you already battle another specific gym leader. Galar was very straightforward with the route you had to take and finish the game. Sure, you can keep going into the wild area and exploring there, but after catching or finding high-level Pokemon, at some point you need to finish the gym battles. Sun and Moon are also very linear along with X and Y, however Sun and Moon have more of a sense of world building than I believe X and Y does. While X and Y has one grand place, Lumio City, Sun and Moon has multiple islands, each having their own special area added on, with the area in the center of the map known as Aether Paradise. Sword and Shield had a great map, but the gym areas in town in general were lackluster and disappointing. Introducing Pokemon Dens and Dynamaxing added a lot of new exploration areas and new mechanics to discover these new areas, but it was all handed to you from the beginning. A better adaptation of this wild area would be Wild Area in Pokemon Arceus. Pokemon Arceus is a great example of adding immersion into a Pokemon game. The ability to throw Pokeballs at wild Pokemon and thoroughly need to explore an area and catch Pokemon to progress is a direction I didn't care for. It works for the game it's centered around, but the major aspect I believe should be put into later games is the Pokemon catching mechanic in the wild area as a whole. This is something I think they did fairly well in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. The developers got rid of the aimlessly chucking Pokeballs at wild Pokemon mechanic, but there's still the ability to see and battle wild Pokemon up close, which is something I think is needed with all new gen titles. The game was memorable and had many areas with a lot of story packed into a city or on top of a mountain. There are many areas to go through, and the post-game added a few more small spots to go legendary hunting as well. Overall, the exploration and environmental portions of Pokemon games give the games remembrance. Remembering areas such as White Forest or Black City in Pokemon Black and White that had huge explorable areas with tons of secrets in them, good big areas packed with story, or even small events add to a memorable experience, thus making the game better due to its nostalgia aspects. Something that has been lacking in the newer generation of Pokemon is the starters. My least favorites being from Sword and Shield starters with Sobble, Cinderace, and Grookey as your choices. I like Grookey, but his final evolution had so much wasted potential. Now, how do the Pokemon in the game affect how enjoyable the series is? They're heavily intertwined in my opinion. Having good Pokemon designs that kids can connect with will allow for more memories and better involvement in the story. Sure, all these Pokemon eventually grew on me, but I'm not the majority of the player base. The rest of the game had great Pokemon added with every new installment. There's new fun Pokemon to see. I feel like the only offender in this case would once again have to be Sword and Shield. While they had great new additions, most of them were just animals from real life or just badly designed. Take the legendaries for example. They're dogs with a Sword or Shield breastplate, and there's nothing more you can really say about it. They don't have anything legendary about them. Other legendaries, such as Kyogre or Groudon, have more design to fall back onto even if the games are bad. There's no personality, and it's disappointing to see in some of the latest Pokemon games. Finally, the characters, and honestly, all the games had amazing characters. Hop from Sword and Shield, Hau, Guzma, Lily, and Gladiant from Sun and Moon, and even Blue from Pokemon Red and Blue were all solid choices that added more to the story. But what made them good? I think having the realistic aspects of how someone would react in real life being presented helps a lot. That's what makes the newest game one of the best from the new generation, specifically Arven. Arven had a tragic backstory that was actually shown on screen and not just explained away or having you dig for it. It's all there. The growth of a person from the beginning of their journey to the end is what makes a good rival, at least. Good characters are just simply made from good writing and design. I like Guzma's design and the personality as a macho leader of his team who just wanted to be taken seriously as a trainer, leading to him starting Team Skull to achieve a goal. For writing villains, they need a good motive and how they got the motive to start being evil in the first place. Their goal needs to be understandable and relate back to their motivations. That's why, as I stated earlier, Lysander is such a terrible villain. He has money and power and wants to save the Earth's environment despite directly causing its destruction. There needs to be no hypocrisy present in their plans and their execution. They should be redeemable at least when it comes to Pokemon games, but what makes a good rival? Contrary to what many might believe, I like a little more of a challenge to my games. That's why I enjoy rivals like Blue or Silver due to their extra personality and added challenge they bring to the game. They make snide remarks, act like a jerk overall, and make the player want to beat them, and that's the best part. When you finally beat them at the end of the game and get that satisfaction of winning against someone who you really don't like, it's perfect. Then, once you're older, or even just looking back retrospectively, you can learn to love and appreciate them for who they are. You should be able to look back on Pokemon rivals and feel accomplished and happy for the times you spent together. Hop is a great example of this. He has a hard time accepting defeat throughout the story, and at the end, he finally gets the closure he needed and decides to settle on being a Pokemon professor. He was such a deep and well written character, but the flaws of the game he's in overshadows what he could have been. He could have been like Arven, who now gets endless praise for having a tragic backstory and character development, but no, the shallow experience of Sword and Shield ruins that. So I've gone over all the things I think makes a good Pokemon game, being characters, exploration, Pokemon, and the journey of it all. In a future video, I plan to make up a Pokemon game, like brainstorm my ideal Pokemon game with concept art and possibly even Pokemon designs. I'm also making a Pokemon fan game right now, but that's still in early development, like in the concept stages, but still a giant project regardless. But overall, I hope you enjoyed the video and let me know what you think in the comments below.